Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. Wherever in the world you are listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on, thank you so much for the continued support and joining us for this episode as we start to round out, getting towards year 2 of this podcast. So thank you, whether you're a new listener or been there since the beginning. Thank you guys so much for joining us here. This topic is one that I get requested a lot, and I always like to give my guests the opportunity to choose topics that they're particularly passionate about. And it happened to work out that my guest right now is very passionate about this topic. And that is the topic of maintaining a well-disciplined team, both on and off the court. I think it's something that all of us as coaches dream of having, but all of us who have coached knows that it is a process. It's not just something that happens by magic. So we're going to talk with my guest today about how he and his staff in the program instill that level of discipline, both on and off the court, talk a little bit about things on the court that require that discipline, talk about maintaining discipline and focus, as well as some off the court discipline type measures as well, so that we're getting into everything related to having a well-disciplined team, both on and off the court. I'm very happy to be joined by the head boys basketball coach at East Rutherford High School. Very happy to be joined by Coach Turner Kincaid. Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Again, a topic that, man, we all want. We all want that well-disciplined team, and I'm looking forward to hearing your story and hearing that journey. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and talk about your journey, Coach. Where's the game of basketball taking you? Where's your coaching journey taking you? And what are the stops that led you to where you're at right now?
I could never imagine that I would be, doing some of the things that I'm doing now, in coaching. It all started out with me and some college buddies wanting to volunteer and help out at a local YMCA and just share the game and, just kind of be the men that we had that, when we were coming up in the game and worked for a little bit. And then I was able to actually hit a restart in my life. And I just said, and made my mind up. I said I wanted to be a basketball coach about 13 years ago. And it started out, my mind, I wanted to, do the AAU circuit and, and work with kids that way and just help them, be better high school players. And it turned out, a buddy of mine who was coaching middle school at the time asked me to be his middle school assistant. And from there, it just took off. I was a middle school assistant for 1 year. Then I was a head boys middle school coach for 6. Learned to, played in a really, really great conference in the Western Carolina Foothills. Just really awesome middle school conference, really great guys. And ended up asking he was my old middle school coach, one of the individuals that got me thinking about coaching basketball at a young age. He was a boys JV coach at the time. And I asked him, I said, I really want to get into the high school game. I really, what would be the best way to do that? Mm-hmm. And he's like, man, you got a really good team coming next year. So I don't think you want to know the answer to that. Nah. No, I was like, no, tell me. And he's like, it'd be good if you come up, be an assistant, when you're ready, and and I can show you the ropes. I'd give you a lot of leadway and let you run some practices, help you with your practice planning, and just it'd be good for you to be around these kids, and you can coach them in travel ball, and that'd be the best step. And I took a leap of faith. I was an assistant for 1 year. Things came about where there was an opening to do JV girls. I looked at it as a way to stretch myself. Never having a lot of experience with girls. I coached a girls travel ball team for 2 seasons. But before that, never had the experience of really being in a winter basketball grind with a group of girls. And I looked at it as a way to stretch myself and take that next step and prepare myself. And I was a JV coach and a girls varsity assistant for 3 seasons, and then the job opportunity opened up, at East Rutherford High School, and and it was good that I had a whole lot of coaches who I coached with that was super highly spoke highly of me and my abilities, and I was able to look up and get one of these things. And this year's been fun. It's everything I thought it would be. My dream was to be a high school coach, and I'm living that, and that's pretty cool.
And I can imagine, just thinking about how unique those experiences are as somebody who's done both of the things that you previously mentioned, which is coaching middle school and as well as, coaching girls, that had to probably have a big effect on you in terms of the way that you learned how to be a coach and learned how to explain the game, because the way that you have to coach a middle school team and then the way that you explain or teach maybe the game to girls perhaps definitely kind of challenges you and maybe stretches you a little bit. And you probably use some of that at your current position right now.
Yes, definitely. A lot of things that we do now, as far as like with our team culture and instilling things in our boys, we took that, I took a lot of that stuff from Coach Jennifer Kenninger and watching her girls program and seeing how she led and seeing how she motivated the girls. And I said, man, that'd be really cool. I'm going to implement that stuff when I go back to the boys. And with boys, you got to serve it a little bit different, completely different mindset with boys than it is girls. But that family atmosphere, she did a phenomenal job doing that. And I just ate that stuff up because, we had that at the middle school, I felt like, but her program was that on steroids because she was such a thoughtful coach. Just little things. Like, she's going to say hello to each player when they walk in the gym. She's going to say goodbye when they leave the gym each and every single day. And that was just, picking up on those nuances and adding them, to the things that we do with our boys. I think it makes a difference. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think that a lot of us as coaches were in some ways little parts of all the coaches that we previously worked with. And we just, we pick and choose and grow from everyone that we're around. And some things like you just mentioned that we get from other coaches, we're like, man, I'm stealing this for the rest of my coaching career. I'm taking this with me for sure. That's awesome. Coach, one of the things on your Twitter profile, I noticed you had a few real important words there. You had brotherhood, and then you had discipline, which is something we're going to talk about. And the other one was commitment. And kind of like with discipline, all coaches definitely want to have a team and a program that's committed, but I think every coach kind of has their own definition or their own interpretation of what that word means. So I want to ask you about that word commitment. What does that word mean to you and your program? And how does that message get sent about what commitment is?
Yeah, well, with BDC, brotherhood, discipline, commitment, that commitment piece is huge. To me, commitment is being able to stay with something and being able to stay fighting for something, even when you don't feel as enthusiastic about it as you did before. With us, being committed means, listen, we're going to do this and we're going to be this way, and you can count on me to be this way each and every single day, regardless of how I'm feeling, because I'm committed to the team. I'm committed to being a better player. I actually got it from PGC, a thing called commitment statements. And we, coaches and our boys, we write it out each and every single year about what can you depend on us to be each and every single day? Not necessarily points and rebounds and stuff like that. What kind of teammate you can expect me to be each and every single day? What am I going to bring to the table? And we do that off the court, and we do that and we share it with each other. And we post in our lockers, so we hold each other accountable. And we said, hey man, you said you're going to be our energy guy. You're quiet today at practice. What's going on? And then from those conversations, you'll figure out, hey, I broke up with my girlfriend today, or it's just say I made a terrible exam. I made a terrible exam grade. Progress reports are around the corner, and you just got to remind them, hey man, you got to shake that off, because we're going to stay committed. And look, and that stuff you're going through, because I'm committed to you, we're going to get through it together. Commitment it's just a big word. It's a word that I feel like that binds families. You got to be committed to it. I'm going to be committed to being a good dad. I'm going to be committed to being a good coach. And I'm going to do the little things that reflect that. So commitment to me just means, it means making whatever you're doing a priority and doing it regardless of. I'm not going to make an excuse not to do it. My lawn looks like crap sometimes. I'm not real committed to taking care of my lawn. but what I'm committed to, I am committed to, being a good father. So I'm making sure I'm having that time talking to my boys each and every single day about situations that they're going through. And okay, hey, how are you handling that? And hey, I don't necessarily agree with how you handle that and stuff, but I'm going to do those little things each and every single day, regardless. And I'm going to figure out ways to do it because I'm committed to it. If you're not committed to it, you're going to invent ways not to do it. And that's what we don't want on our team. We don't want guys coming up with a ton of excuses. We want to build that strong sense of commitment and making it worthwhile for them.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that about the idea about being committed and the consistency element to it. And it's something I think that, it's almost tested every single day. Like, how committed are you? How much does this mean to you? And like you said, whatever things are important to you, you'll commit to those and see them through. And then sometimes things like the yard or the lawn, I've been there too. Sometimes those could fall by the wayside a little bit. So no, I like that a lot. So again, they definitely do go hand in hand, the idea of commitment, and then our topic about being a well-disciplined team on and off the court. So let's kind of get into that aspect of things about what does a well-disciplined team or even a well-disciplined program mean to you. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of talk about your experience kind of building that discipline within your program currently.
Yeah. The big thing, right, is first explaining to the players, what is our, interpretation of what discipline is, I think, because if you talk to your players, let's say the word fun, what coaches is going to think is what's going to be fun, and what players think are fun probably going to look like two different things, right? So I honestly believe with today's kids and how resourceful they are and all the information and all the noise, you have to first be able to get where their head's at and get the team on the goal. But our team goal is XYZ. The discipline part of it comes into place is these are the actions and behaviors we have to reach this goal, and getting them to understand that. So well-disciplined teams, to, what it will look like to me is, let's say we're playing in a heated rivalry game. We're not going to jaw back and forth with the other team because that doesn't align with our goals. Our actions and behaviors, we're going to talk to each other and figure out the next play or the next set, or what the next 2 minutes look like, what we're trying to accomplish, and just getting players to just hone in on what's important, what aligns with our goals, and being able to consistently do those actions and behaviors to do so. So being, ways that, that we try to do that is we try to weave it in everything we do. Like it goes back to that commitment statement. It's like, not only you got to be this person as a player, you got to be this person as a son. You got to be this person as a student. Because if you're lacking in one area, it shows us that you're not ready to do it on the court. If you're out here being a hothead in class or being lazy in class, then it's probably chances are you're going to be lazy on defense. And I'm pretty sure you go through this at times, Coach. Teachers will tell you about a kid, right? And you can sit and say, "Oh yeah, I definitely see that," because that's how he plays. And
definitely.
Yeah, getting our kids to understand that, and that it all works together, and that it all means something. Getting them to understand that is huge. So well-disciplined team to me looks like a team that's really, really focused on their goal and really, really committed to each other, and understanding what it takes from each and every single one of them, to get to that goal. I tell my son every time he messes up in school, because he's a big social butterfly, what are you in school to do? And, and he got to remind me, I'm in school to learn. No, you're not in school to make friends. You're not in school to be class clown. You're in school to get this education. And with our basketball players, it's the same way, because especially more so with boys than it was with girls that I noticed. Boys have a lot of, they have the team's plan and they have their plan. So getting them to understand that, okay, let's adjust your plan to where it fits into the team's plan, and understand the only way you're getting there individually is with these group of guys. So just getting them to realize what our expectation of what discipline is and how we want it to be is huge. Because for me personally, I think the old school authoritarian, you do what I say, when the coach comes around, everybody has that heightened sense. Those days are over. kids today got way too many options. They got way too many things to do. But you can get your team to self-discipline themselves, and you can get your team to always be thinking about the things with consistency of what you expect from them. Like full disclosure, I yell, kick, and scream with the best of them, but I'm not going to yell and berate players to get them to do something. I feel like if I got to get to that point to motivate somebody to do that, then there's an issue underlying the already. If I got to yell at you to get you to do something that you're supposed to love to do, or to protect something that you love doing, then something's not lining up. You know what I'm saying? And then we got to go fix that. So we have a lot of conversations with our kids, and we're always picking their brains, and we're always questioning them and challenging them in little bitty different ways, not just me, but our staff as well. So I'm very fortunate. I have a really great staff that each and every single day, we got a lot of eyes and a lot of voices keeping the kids in check and holding them accountable.
And how would you describe what that adjustment period was like in terms of the player buy-in? Did that come right away? Was there a bit of a process to that? How did that process go?
That was a bit of a process for my group at first, because you're asking kids. This school, the past 2 years, their boys varsity program went through a little bit of a rebuilding area. They only won 6 ball games in 2 years, and then you got a COVID season that got slapped in that wash. So you're talking to a lot of kids about buying into getting in this winning culture, this winning mentality. You're asking them to invest in something that they never see dividends from. So that buy-in at first was really tough. I'm a big process guy, not a results guy. So with telling them at the end of tryouts, telling all our seniors, like, hey, like, this season is going to be a whole lot of ups and downs, but you got to put your all in, because you're going to be the start of something that's going to be really beautiful, that's going to grow here. And getting them to understand that, and our senior leadership echoing that's been huge. Because the buy-in at first is tough, because you're asking kids to show up to these extra workouts, commit themselves in the weight room, commit themselves in the classroom, dress different, talk different. And man, we ain't won any games yet. We doing all this, coach. And so getting them to understand, man, that this process, it doesn't all come at once, but you're going to notice things in the future that's gonna get you there. And it's just like I said, it's kind of like it's a salesman job, really. You got to sell them on it, and celebrate those little victories along the way. Like anything, man, this year the increased player buy-in as far as with the discipline piece, because it all ends with what happens on that basketball court. Like if you get there, and if your team is having success and they're growing on the floor, and if they're growing, in the classroom, they're actually can see themselves becoming better people and getting better, then they're going to continue to buy in more. But if it doesn't come, and if you can't find those little victories, and if you can't find, then you're gonna lose them, in my opinion. And it's just, I would take a summer league game, and I'd say, hey, this team is such and such, and they beat us in summer league, and if we played them in the fall preseason, and if the point differential was better, oh man, I'm echoing that. I'm like, guys, look, This is where the process is taking us, baby. We got to keep the train going. So it's just noticing those. And it's tougher when you're losing, because your victories are coming in from weird different places,
different forms, different shapes, right?
Yeah, it does. It takes different shapes and forms, and you just got to keep that, because these kids have to see that carrot. They got to feel that, and just loving on them, showing them that you care, and letting them know that that the process is to make them a better person, and just giving them the vision. So those are some of the things.
And I think as a coach who has been through, those situations before where sometimes the wins are few and far between, I think what you bring up is a really good point, that if you're trying to get a team to buy in, you're trying to, get the discipline where it needs to be, especially if they haven't seen a lot of success, then you almost have to, as we just kind of talked about, in some ways make your team seem like they are maybe a lot more successful than maybe they actually are in the scorebook, like you said, and really make it seem, and hopefully it is the case. But as a coach yourself, I found that sometimes I have to almost like gas myself up and, really, really get excited about certain things that maybe I want to be disappointed in, but I know, if I want to get the team to be bought in and keep what we have going, like I gotta, bring that excitement, even if I'm a little down on things myself sometimes.
Yeah, of course. Like, and that's because everybody hates losing, right? Like that
Mhm.
just, I mean, there's been nights where you go to bed and it's just like it just because you put a whole lot into it. Competitive athletics takes a lot of sacrifice, and you're chasing some things that only one team at the end of the season is going to get. So there is a lot of heartbreak, and there's a lot of frustration sometimes in it. But just finding, one of the things that I do is I always ask my players, and I always send things in the group chat, and I'm always reading positive stuff. Because the negative can wear down on you. I mean, the negative in a season can wear down on
Yeah.
you. And I mean, think about what coaching is. Coaching is consistently showing somebody their negatives and getting them to have the energy to go back on there and work on it and get good at it, only to go back and fail again to go back and conquer it. Like, so
Yeah.
it's a different mode. It's a different mindset that you have when you're an athlete, and that coach athlete relationship is just completely different. Because we're pushing kids to failure, to go back and figure out why we failed, to go back and conquer it again. But that's life. And you give them you give them a skill set, and you give them a toolkit that they'll be able to take, man, into anywhere, and know that, hey, I met challenges before, and even if I fall
Mhm.
down flat on my face, I've gotten up before. And just, that's probably the biggest trick in it with keeping your team disciplined during the season, is because in order to keep them disciplined, you have to become process driven. Like, this is the process. This is what we're going to do. Win, lose, or draw. This is how we act. This is how we conduct ourselves. This is how we keep the train moving. Whenever there's a hiccup in there, and whenever players, or especially when you go through, you'll notice most of your team things and losing skids. When the team loses 2 and 3 in a row, weird things start to pop up. It tells you a whole lot about the real true mettle of these kids. So you've got to find things like, no. Here's proof that the process works. We just got to double down and increase it. And you take a game, and I did this past Christmas tournament. We lost a game that, man, it was a real good team out of Charlotte, 4A school. We're a little 2A school, and played them tough, and they exerted their will, and then ended up clipping us. But I was always able to go back to that quarter, to where we held them to 9 points and played our tails off on defense and kept a bigger team off the boards. And I harped on that. I said, y'all, this is us if we just realize it and fight for it. And you got to do those things with the kids, and you got to always, we can't shy away from the negatives. There are things we got to fix, but as many positives as you can point out in any kind of growth, that's going to help your team be more disciplined. Because once they start seeing it's working, that's that endorphin effect, and they're gonna start doing more of it, because they see
Mhm.
where the process is taken.
And I think as a coach, that's one of the things that, we always have to be aware of, is the fact that our understanding of the game is a lot stronger than our players is going to be. And so we as coaches should be able to identify when we're doing well or when things are going really well, even if the players themselves can't tell it. We have to be able to recognize, like you said, if you hold that team to like 9 points, and as a coach, like, man, like that's incredible that we even did that. And your players might not even realize how incredible that is. But since you as a coach knows that, you can't just let that go unspoken. Like you said, you have to let them know that that was something they succeeded in or did well, because otherwise they might not even realize it and just look at the scoreboard and be like, oh, we lost again. But there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, and you got to point that out to them.
Hmm.
You'll have guys, you'll have this. You'll go halfway through a season, and some of your guys, and I'm talking about varsity guys. For me, this happened to me this year. We're in the season, and I'm harping about hit and get on the perimeter. And the player comes to me and goes, Coach, what's this hit and get thing you're talking about?
Uh-oh.
So if they're struggling with the terminology of the game, of course, right? They're struggling with what means what. Why is rebounding important? Well, those are possessions. So explaining that to them too. You're always teaching. You're
Yeah.
always teaching these kids, and I think like the best teams that you'll see is coaches, and the best coaches, when you hear their players talk, those guys really inspired their players to become students of the game, really be hungry about it. And I knew things started to turn around for us culture wise whenever our guys are having for real meaningful basketball debates and asking real meaningful questions about which style of play is better, which coach is this, which player is that. And it's just like, okay, they're starting to dive into this thing and really learn about things because what we've given them. And I think, for us, it grows the game. A more educated fan base of kids that we're creating, they appreciate the game a little bit more. So
and just having those like conversations, it is pretty transformative. We're teachers of the game of basketball, right? So to have players who are going to talk about basketball in those terms, I think as a teacher, you would love for your students to be having these in-depth conversations about whatever subject you're teaching. So if you have your basketball players doing that, then like there's no better sign of buy-in than when your players are talking about hedging screens and talking about trapping and all these other nuances, things that shows that they're committed to the process of learning how the game's actually played.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit. Well, you actually mentioned it about the teachers who maybe point out some of the students who might be acting up a little bit in class. And you also mentioned the fact that your coaching staff, there's eyes everywhere. And so the players know that they're being held accountable. But I did want to talk about specifically off the court discipline and making sure that everything is where it needs to be. In what ways do you emphasize, needing to do things right off the court, and how do you and your staff kind of maintain that things are going the right way in terms of off the court discipline type things?
The way we frame it is that you're always working on your game. Who you are as a person is going to be who you are as a player. And we also stress to them is that, hey guys, you're high school basketball players. Most of the people in those stands, they're not coming for the entertainment value. They're coming because you're a good kid and they want to see you do your thing, something that you love to do. Getting them to understand that and getting them to understand, we always tell them like, listen, if you're bad in one thing, you're really bad in everything. It just ain't hit yet. So if a kid is not paying attention in class and he's checking out in class and just not being mentally engaged, you're actually becoming a worse basketball player, because if you can't do that in class, you can't stay engaged the whole time you're in practice. And that limits us as to what we can do. We do weekly progress reports to where I love those. And we keep it old school, man. Like we make them go and sit there with their teacher with that paper and get them to have to write it down and force those conversations. We want our student athletes to build relationships with their teachers and understand, that these people are people in their lives trying to enrich them and help them and to get as much out of that as possible. We have our disciplinary things we do. Our kids know, the expectation. They know that, what goes down as far as like, you do this, you run here, if it gets here with attendance. But I think, building them into better people and getting as many people involved in that as possible. And our teachers knowing that, our boys know that there's a higher standard in the class. They know that, our senior center cannot do what Joey Cool is doing, who is doing the art. Our senior center knows that, hey, this teacher, what he or she expects from him, what the standard is. And they also know that they got somebody who's going to have their back if anything comes back negative, that we're going to deal with it. And them knowing that, and also getting them to understand that that's actually good for them. Because, our kids have this concept of fairness that's really weird, like, hey, if a teacher is actually pushing you more than she's pushing another kid, you have to understand that's actually better for you.
Real quick, because this is something I emphasize all the time, what you just said. I've said this before too. Oh man, it's like a light bulb thing. I said, if I stop yelling at you, that's when you should be worried. When I stop doing anything like that, when I stop trying to engage you or work with you or talk to you about what you're doing, that's when the alarm should be going off in your head. I just wanted to mention that because, man, that resonated with me, what you just said.
And if I don't challenge you to do something, that means I don't think you can do it.
Yep.
So if I'm on you, if I'm challenging, if I'm pushing you, that means that I think that you can get there. And I think players sometimes as a player, I think about it as, for myself, I never thought about it like that. I never thought about, man, my coach was super on me, but he was on me because he knew what he needed from me, from the team. And he also thought that I could do it.
And we as players used to think it was because they hated us.
Yeah. You always took it personal as a player. Wait, what you mean I can't make that pass? You know what I mean? And having those conversations with the kids and just understanding that, and we have these conversations with our kids, understanding, and we know that you're kids and we know that you're not perfect. I know that, I wouldn't expect you to have the wisdom of a 37-year-old man in class, but what I do expect from you is to be a little bit smarter tomorrow than you were yesterday, and what I do expect from you is to always be cautious about your goals and your expectations, and to always do the actions that reflect that. And and I think this year's group of guys have been wonderful. I've been blessed to have a lot of great groups that had real strong parent bases, and even the kids that that may have been lacking in something else. We had really great team culture where guys would take guys under their wing and make sure that they were okay. And just I've been really blessed to have some teams where I'm blessed to say that there's only been very few incidences where we're just like, hey, like it ain't gonna work. And sometimes, this year coming into it, there was a lot of dudes, I think we lost 3 starters. There's just dudes it wasn't for them, man. They saw how things was gonna be, and they just got off the bus.
You have to be willing to almost kind of accept that as a coach, that everyone's going to be on board or going to be able to deal with it, even if they're your best players on the court. I mean, it is what it is sometimes, right?
Yeah, if they're not bought in, I firmly believe this. If they're not bought in, that best player is not bought in, you're going to underperform, and they're going to look at you as the coach because it falls on you on why this team is underperforming, and the player's not going to get any blame on that. Yet if they don't buy in and they can't do the necessary things to help themselves and help the team, parting ways isn't a bad. And sometimes it sucks to lose talent. Us as coaches, we like to collect talent like Pokemon cards. Like, but if they're not going to buy in and do the right things, what it's going to do is it's like a cancer that just infects everybody. Because if your best player isn't willing to do the right things, and if they aren't the most receptive, then what's that mean for the 12th guy down the line on the bench? Oh, he's definitely not going to go hard in practice, because if our top guy ain't going hard and he's still getting rewarded, then I definitely ain't going to go hard. So it's getting them to realize that and staying on top of those things. And we, at East Rutherford, we have a wonderful faculty that's really supportive of our boys and our girls and what they're trying to do. And we're always having conversations about the kids. And very few kids fall between the cracks where we don't realize what's going on, and that we're having the appropriate conversations to get them back on the right track. Because for us, it necessarily, and I think that's another thing with discipline. It's a shoot for the stars and you'll land on the moon type deal. Like, it isn't so much of a standard that's so high that kids can't get it, but we do ask them to carry themselves in a manner that's slightly above the rest of the student body. Like, we want guys who are striving for excellence, and and getting those guys to realize that, and not every conversation is a hard conversation. If the kid makes a C, if he was a D student and you're trying to get him to that B and he makes a C, it's like, hey, bud, we're not there yet, but I'm proud of the way that you're fighting.
Kind of like the expectations for a player's performance on the court won't be the same for each player.
Yeah. I mean, we had a kid this year, man. He was, I really wasn't sure if I wanted him. It had to take a conversation with his mama, and his mama saying, man, I'm afraid if the kid don't have basketball, that he's just going to give up completely. And he was, I mean, woof, boy, he was a terror at first. And, the first time, the very first conversation, I think he had to do like an OSS, pulled him in my office, and I mean, I really doggone hammered him about this, the expectation, we're not going to do this. The second altercation, what happened is that his teacher and his teacher comes, she said, Coach, you're going to have to put him on the line. You're going to have to do something because he's back. And we had a conversation, and the conversation was a complete ring out. It was like, hey, you're going to have to do your punishment because this is what you owe it to your brothers and your teammates for setting this bad example. But you do realize what that teacher just did. Like, for her to sit there and come and to have that conversation and walk with you and be that involved, that's a lady you need to cling to, because that's the lady that's going to help you. And then the third altercation, it really wasn't. It was an absent-minded type thing, and that was actually one I actually enjoyed having with him. He was going to get something from his mom's car, and it ended up being, well, hey, let's get a haircut, and he didn't go back and check out, which is, for him, it's not an honest mistake, but for him, it's a very honest mistake. It was a lazy mistake. He was too lazy to walk back into school. So we're going on a manhunt for this kid. And then when he walks back into school, I mean, I said, get over here. And I said, and I looked and I said, son, do you realize why I'm fuming right now? And he's just like, I did something stupid. I was like, no, I was worried about you. If we don't know where you're at and you're on my responsibility, if you're on my watch and you disappear, and if I got to tell your mama that something bad happened to her, and that was a real positive conversation. So, I mean, some kids, you got to realize where they're coming from. And for me, it's the thing is, as long as you're always trying, and as long as you're making progress, eventually, our staff feels like we'll get you where you need to be. But some kids, some kids don't want to buy into that push. And, and those are kids, I had to sit there and say, man, I hate to see you go, but, we got to part ways. I can't bend because it's too important. And I've seen what it has done over the years in our young men and women to sit there and compromise that for someone who doesn't see it or doesn't realize that yet.
And what it also sounds like you have, which seems like a really positive thing, and I know some coaches, worry about this sort of thing, is, oh man, if we have to let some of these players go because they're not bought in, then all of a sudden we might not be as successful, and there might be a lot of pressure, and there might be some conversations I have to have with my AD and so on and so forth. But it doesn't seem like you have found yourself in that position where you felt pretty comfortable that some of these players who just weren't ready or weren't committed to it, that they could walk, and it seems like everyone kind of had your back on it and was still ready to support you on your mission to where you're going.
Yeah, I had a very, very, very positive experience with everywhere I've been, with having supportive, because this is actually my second technically rebuild job. My first one was at the middle school, and those first couple years was really rough. We didn't win a lot of games, but I had a principal and an AD, and I had the faculty that was really supportive of what we were doing with the boys and allowed us to turn it around. And same thing here. Like, we look at it, they looked at it and they say, hey, we support what you're trying to do. We realize that this process isn't going to be overnight. And I think what they saw a little bit is from my vision coming into place with the community involvement and what our kids are doing in the classroom to the students that they're becoming, it works out well. But if I was given piece, because that's something we do worry about, administration, and whether or not a community and the faculty believing in what you're doing, I think that is so huge. You hit the nail on the head. I would urge coaches, man, to get out there and have as much conversations and build as many relationships within that faculty. And I'm a big feedback person. I'll always go to my boss and I'll say, how you feeling? How you feeling about our program right now? Like, how do you feel about it? And he'll be honest with me. He'll say, hey man, I feel like we're on the right track. And we had a bad loss a couple of weeks ago. Our boys just didn't show up to play. He's like, I still feel like we're on the right track. He was like, yeah. But he's like, man, but last night was rough. I was like, I agree with you. I was like, yeah. But you knew that we got our support, and they know that I think people will support something that they feel like that they're a part of. I think that's one thing about our basketball program. And ever since I started coaching in middle school, I felt like that the faculty and even the other students, everybody feels like that they're part of our basketball program in some shape, or fashion. We got the Cavalier crazies over here, and that student section is awesome. And they really are like our teammates. They come and they support us. Most of them are athletes in other sports, so we go support them whenever we're not in season. Which is rare because we push our kids to play as many things as possible. But it's just talking to the faculty, building relationships with the faculty, letting them know, listen, like, I want these kids, the better students these kids are the better athletes they are. And I want to work with you to create that environment. And people will have your back when you go through tough times because they know what you're trying to build with the kids. Because I think at the end of the day, at least for public school, I can't speak on how it would be at one of those high-end private schools, but I think for public schools, at the end of the day, I think what people want to see is positive, good young men coming through your program who play hard. And I think that's, if you got that, I think they'll have you back. But that is something I think every coach, especially a new coach, first thing you should do is go talk to as many doggone teachers as possible. And, and introduce yourself, make sure everybody knows you, and get that vision of what you want from them out of it, and say, listen, like, these are what I expect from my basketball players. Now, this is what I expect from them in class. And I want you to work with me to make sure that happens, because these kids need this. And I think when you include them, I haven't ran across a teacher who hated one of my basketball players yet. They all love them because they know, they know that, they're going to get, they're going to get a good kid. And that's how it should be. If a kid gets if a teacher gets one of your players, they ought to be elated. They're like, oh, this kid's a basketball player. I know I got a good one. Yeah. Because
absolutely.
Teachers, especially the good ones, they're just as passionate about teaching that subject as we are basketball.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more with what you just said. I know of a program with my girls, they have a survey that they have to give to all their teachers that's rating what their leadership ability is in the classroom. And that number has to be a certain number. And if it's not, then we work on that and do goal setting, because like you said, I want that teacher to be like, oh, I got so-and-so in my class. Like, we're good. We're good to go. I got a leader. I got somebody who's on it. And like, I'm grateful to have one of the basketball girls on in the classroom. And to me, and it sounds like you and I are on the same wavelength for that. Like, when I hear like teachers, talk so glowingly about the way that the players are in the classroom, to me, that pretty much means more to me than like almost anything that they do on the court. Because I think, like you said, we're building the right person, not just a basketball player.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that's really at the end of the day, that's the most important part.
Yes.
That those trophies will collect dust, but what that person grows into and their impact, that's going to go on for a long time.
100% agreed. Coach, when we talk about the ability to have that discipline and have that structure in place, what do you feel that you can run on the court that you can attribute because of how well disciplined your team is? What are some things you think that you can run offensively or defensively that run well because of the buy-in and the discipline that your program has?
Well, we are a dribble drive team, and I think there's a lot of, and I listened to the piece on dribble drive, and you're a big dribble drive, not like that dribble drive guy. And dribble drive coaches tell you that whenever you sit there and say we run dribble drive, people automatically think, oh, you're just trying to ISO people out and go one-on-one. It's actually a very disciplined. There's actually a lot of discipline that goes into dribble drive because you're being aggressive, right? I'm trying to get to the rim to create an opportunity. But if I draw help, I have to be disciplined enough to make the right read. For us, our things we run into early on offensively, whenever we're not clicking as well, is our guys will try to split help. We don't want you to split help. We want you to throw to where the help came from so that we can reattack again or get an extra pass. That takes a lot of discipline, especially when you got a kid that's really good at getting to the rim. Like, it takes a lot of discipline to kick it out, trust my teammate, because I think that's one of the fun things about dribble drive, right? I got space, I get to attack it for a layup, or I got space, and if I'm a shooter, man, I'm gonna get these really long closeouts. It takes a lot of discipline to make the right reads. It takes a lot of discipline to realize that, okay, even though I know I'm a shooter and I'm getting a long closeout, is this really the best shot, or is that extra pass the best shot? I feel like things like that offensively for us in our dribble drive attack you got to have a lot of discipline to not make it into what people will say it will be. But I also argue with people is like, hey man, you can run anything undisciplined and it'll look like what you say dribble drive looks like. Like, I mean, I've seen that a lot, but I think, being able to trust those penetration reads, being able, our guys, clearing out space, sprinting hard on the cuts, post players, relocating whenever they're supposed to, those things take a lot of discipline. Defensively, I'm a man-to-man coach, and I believe, man-to-man is one of the most disciplined defenses out there. You got to be disciplined. You got to trust your brothers, that they're doing their assignment. You can't, when you're in help, you got to be active and communicating, not just taking a cigarette break, so I think like those things require a lot of discipline.
And I like the point about the dribble drive, because like you said, dribble drive can look pretty interesting depending on the situation and how it's being run, and it can like you said, you can call anything dribble drive, but I think the level of decision making that gets involved, like you said, making the right read and being able to understand what you're doing off the dribble and where you're going, the level of decision making and the discipline to know what the right move is or what the right read is. I think there's so much more to it than maybe to the untrained eye they don't see, and how much thought process has to go into it and making the right decision. And it sounds like that's something you're building with your players.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that coaches do, right? You come up in a certain program or come up learning a certain way to play, and that pedagogy kind of takes over. You really see that with football guys. I love to see wing T and spread guys go at it, because they are stuck in their ways, man, and that's the way they see the game. Basketball, we can get like that too. We get this thing in our head on how the game, should be played. I'm a big believer that, that the physics of the game, they don't change,
Sure.
But the way that we do it, the way that we get to it, I think good basketball teams move the ball from side to side and attack north and south. And I think, making the ball athletic is the best way to, combat defenses, making sure that thing is moving and that you're putting the defense in scramble situations. I love teaching via dribble drive on how to do that, but there are some awesome offenses out there that do the exact same thing,
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm 100% in agreement with you there. And like you said, it's always fun to see those situations of those philosophies that coaches completely buy in, and watching them go at it. Like you said, that's always a cool situation. And then on man-to-man discipline, I mean, I know, and you mentioned it too, how disciplined somebody needs to be in order to play man-to-man. So let me just ask you, what are some of your core principles that you and your staff do when going and working on man-to-man? What are some things y'all emphasize?
Well, we're no middle team. We don't like the ball going into the middle of the floor. A lot of things we emphasize is we want to emphasize getting in the gaps, the help. We're not full out denying. We're in the gaps. We're helping. We're putting as much pressure on the ball as possible to try to funnel it into the corners. So, our shell drills, we're working a lot on defending those slot drives. The slot drives and baseline drives, those are things that we see a lot, and being able to help and rotate and recover. So it's a no middle defense, but we're a no middle defense that's committed to, the limited penetration as much as we can. We're not full on pack line. We just tell our guys, to get a hand in the passing lane, but get in the gap. We have some athletic defenders. We're blessed with that, to where we can play passing lanes. We do preach contest in the pass. When the ball is moved, we want to close out on our guy and try to get a hand on that pass. So we're talking about contesting passes just as much as contested shots, and we keep track of deflections. So for us, installing that is a lot of breakdown 3-on-3 shell drills, to where we're initiating situations to where our guys have to rotate. We do a lot of 3-on-3 in the initial breakdowns because it forces our guys to cover space. 4-on-4, 5-on-5, they can hide a little bit, but 3-on-3,
Yep.
they really have to. It puts them at a disadvantage almost.
Nowhere to run.
You gotta go. You gotta close out. I gotta exaggerate getting into the gap in 3-on-3 because we have really good spacing. So 3-on-3 creates these triple and double gaps where guys have to really be able to judge, how to help and how can I still contest the pass. And also helping out on our scramble rotations. We're also big on rebounding as well. So we do a lot of boxing out, getting guys to be committed to getting committed to get a body on somebody and going to go compete for the ball. Don't wait for the ball to come to you. Once you get positioned, don't get pushed under the rim. Go get the ball at its highest point.
And with I think one of the things, going back to what we talked about commitment, I think rebounding is like a big one with commitment, like you said, being committed and to making the contact, initiating that contact, but then also even going back to the discipline part. I know one of the things you mentioned before was about, not getting into it and, letting things go, things that the other team does. And I mean, you and I both know that it gets pretty physical, it gets pretty intense, especially down there on the boards and down there on the low block. And I think that
Of course,
it is important for players to know, like, hey, like you got to keep your head on your shoulders and, not get frustrated or upset or lose your cool when there's a big, tie up or big tangle up down there, and just kind of move on and let things go. Because as you mentioned, you expect a lot of, contact and some physicality on rebounding, but then there's got to be a limit to it where like you can't push it too far.
yeah, exactly. And I think, like, part of that thing too with discipline too is seeing those situations that players might run into and saying, hey, like when this situation happens, this is how we're going to handle it. Because sometimes where you fall into a discipline issue is sometimes a kid may genuinely not know how to handle that situation. And you gotta be that mentor piece now. Like, hey, son, you can't do it like that. This way is a much better way to do it. And I feel like this, if we're being physical and if we're contesting things the way that we want to, the other team should be a little agitated. They should be a little chippy if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, So it's about like, hey, when this happens, you gotta shut your mouth, you gotta keep playing, you gotta go to the next play, and you gotta realize that you may get on their nerves if you're doing your job. And you probably should get on your nerves if you're really doing your job. Like, and it's just realizing our players, hey, when you see that, man, this is how you need to conduct yourself. Don't get into a pushing match when the ref blows the whistle or when the ref tells you something. We're real big on telling our guys when the referee is talking to you, you make eye contact, you give him yes, sir. And you make sure that he's able to do his job to the best of his ability. And just talking to our players about that. And it's tough because I think the key is with discipline is having the structure and the vision, right? But it's also not letting anything slip. Each and every single time, you got to be on them about doing things the right way. And no matter how little it is, if it's something that you see, it's got to say, hey, and it's just reminding players, that's why I love the commitment statement culture. Because you're reminding guys like, hey, is this who we are? Because sometimes you can check it just like that. And they'll have to think, they'll be like, nah, coach, I got you, my bad. And, we keep it moving. So I encourage our kids to have as much dialogue with us as possible. We teach them how to have that dialogue. We tell them that, hey, like, if you got a grievance or if you got something that you're seeing, you look me in the eye, you talk to me about it in this manner, and then, we're going to listen to you. And I think they feel like that they're heard and they have input, which keeps them bought in.
Yeah, I like that. I agree with you that. And going back to what you said before about, some of those situations that come up where, like you said, like, hey, when this happens, this is how we have to act, or this is how we have to conduct ourselves. Because like you said, sometimes, our players don't know that and they need it explicitly taught to them. Just like going back before, like players need sometimes to be told when they're being successful, even if it doesn't show up on the scoreboard. There's some other situations they might not even be aware of or know how to handle themselves, but we as coaches have to be aware and point that out so that it doesn't become a bigger issue in a game, for sure. Before we hit our concluding segment, Coach, I did want to ask about just some general advice that you would give to a coach who feels like they either need to right the ship or maybe they're coming into a program that needs to get back on track with their discipline and refocus in that way. In general, what advice would you give to a coach who might find themselves in that sort of situation?
The first thing that from day one, right, when you get the job, and you see that if it's a program that's like, hey, we got a lot of discipline issues, this, that, and the third, you got to find your faculty and staff. You got to find some people in the community who care, and you got to create like, hey, like this is what I envision for my team, and tell them the roles that they can have to help with it. When our kids wear their paraphernalia, to let's say Barley's, the pizza place, and he sees one of our basketball players, the owner of that restaurant, he knows, like, hey son, how's your season going? How you doing? Well, we're watching, we're interested in, we're supporting you, we're rooting for you. That stuff helps. It's not salad. I tell people all the time, that's not salad dressing. That is the core. That is your lettuce, tomatoes. That is the core ingredient. And that's the very first thing when you do day one. It's the very first thing is to create that community support group. The kids need to hear it from all angles. They have to feel like that the same thing is being echoed, because this is teenagers do this all the time. I mean, they'll keep going around until they get the answer, the confirmation that they want. So and every once in a while they'll find it, but if they find it in places to where they're like, man, that guy's confirming my behavior, but I really don't want his life, yet these other 16 people who support me and are keeping me in our reporting to our coaching staff, I want what they got. So let me go ahead and get back right. As far as my best advice for the middle of the season, which is tough. That's I'm an honesty broker. That is difficult, because when things go south in the middle of the season, it's so difficult to get it back. I tell you, that's the time to not focus on X's and O's. No new play is going to fix that. No new defense is going to fix that. You got to get the guys together. And what I would say is that you got to have a lemon squeeze. We actually did this one time with our JV girls. Practice was going terrible, and we had played terrible the night before. And I knew that at that point something's not right with them. So, so we stopped practice. I said, put up the balls. I said, we're going to go right up there at the top of that gym. We're going to talk about this. And you gotta really get to see what the root of the problem is. And a lot of times, and you got to encourage your players to be honest with each other. Because I said, boys, we got to get it out. And we're not touching those balls until we figure out what's going on, because something's not right. And you're going to get some dialogue, you're going to get some conversation, and that's when you and your staff have to be those mentors to help these men untie these knots. If it gets super severe, guidance counselors are really great resources. I've never met a guidance counselor. I've never met a guidance counselor that didn't love to talk about social emotion.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you get those people involved as well. And whenever it's starting to slide, and whenever you got to right the ship, that's when you really gotta focus on, okay, listen, basketball's secondary right now, because we're not being who we are as people. And it should only take one or two meetings to do that. But within those meetings and within those things, you gotta listen to the kids, really, really listen, and really, really ask the right questions. That's not the time to start preaching to them or lecturing to them. That's the time to seem as non-threatening as possible, so that they can give you as much information that you need to sit there. Get at the end of the conversation, it may be something as simple as, man, Johnny's dating my ex-girlfriend, man. I don't like that. And the team is split over that. They're split between Bob and Johnny because of a girl. And it's just, but if you come off threatening, if you do that authoritarian style, right? The authoritarian style worked, I think, whenever I was coming up, because there wasn't forms of communication. Like, I could probably have an issue with a teammate or somebody and be talking on the phone, and my nosy mother, spine, she hears the conversation, she's going to call my coach. We don't get that luxury nowadays. These kids have a whole underground where they communicate, where they don't even involve adults. So what we have to do is that when we got their attention in that space, don't preach, listen, and ask questions, dig it out. And then once you get to where it is, that's when you and your staff and your support group got to come together and say, okay, this is the problem. Let's work together as a community to fix it. And that's just, it's a lot of work, but being disciplined is a lot of work. And I believe that that's important. That's one of the things in our program that we always said what we were going to do is we're going to be a classy organization. We're going to let these kids be themselves, but we are going to do things the right way. And it's a lot of work. It's something you got to be committed to. If you just want discipline for it to be convenient, it ain't. This discipline don't work like that. It's really a way of life. It's the way you do things.
Yeah. If there was just a switch to be flipped and it was all going to be fixed like that, man, that would be easy. But No, like you said, that doesn't
Yeah.
quite happen that way. It is a process. It is a journey for sure. Awesome. Coach, to
Yeah.
wrap up, there's a couple questions I ask every guest. So I'll go ahead and get started with this first one. You've given a lot of great moments in your answers so far. So hopefully got another one here. Well, thinking back on your coaching career, what is a moment that you can look back on that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
Um, looking back on it, I look back at I think it was my fifth season as a middle school coach. And those were 2 years that were really, really rough. The kids did everything right. They played their hearts out. We just was in a tough conference, and we bottomed out. And I was really down on myself, as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I ignored the process, or I ignored the thing that I said I was about. Like, I was consumed with the results. And it actually had to take one of my former players coming back and having a conversation with me. He wasn't doing real well, and he was just like, coach. He asked me at that time. Our motto was, all out, all pride, can't lose. He said, Coach, whenever we said all out, all pride, can't lose, did you really believe that? And I said, yeah. I was like, I'm convicted, in everything. And he goes, well, I'm in a little rut, but I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna go to barber school. I'm gonna make my teammates, my mom, everybody proud. And he's like, I'm gonna do it all out, and I'm gonna pick my head up. And he's like, man, coach, I know I'm not gonna lose. I just know. And he's like, I just need somebody to believe in me a little bit. And I told him, I said, I got 100% faith in that. If you go out there and if you doggone do that, and if you put your head down, the fight that you got into you just got to fight the right battles that you're going to come out on top. And that kind of brought me back to where, like, you know what? These results do not matter. The results will come. I just keep building. And then my last year, that was when my first group of kids from the travel ball program we installed started coming in, and the wind started coming, and even during those times, like when you're getting former players coming back, and having these conversations with you, we don't talk about the games. We talk about, the conversations that we had. We talk about the wacky time at the restaurant after a big game. Like, so those are the things that are important. Coaching is an art and a science. The science part, I firmly believe anybody can do. If you see something that's working and your kids look like those kids, you implement that.
Yeah.
But it's the art part of it. Instilling that life piece, listening, building relationships with your players. That's the part that I think that if coaches focused on that part more, it will get them by them rough times, because the good times are coming. You may not be able to control, and like I said, I'm dealing from a public ball experience. I can't control who's having babies and who's coming through the program, but what I can control is when certain groups get there, they're going to be elevated, And I think as coaches, we think championship or bust. Maybe you didn't have a championship year. Maybe the best coach in the nation right now is a guy that was expected to finish 500, but right now he's sitting second in his conference. That may be the best guy. That the best guy may be the guy that is 0 for right now, don't have any wins, but he's keeping his team together and they're doing the right things, and nobody's going to transfer. That might have been the coaching job of the year. Heck, we don't know, and we won't know until years after. But that got me refocused on what I was doing, and where I was headed as far as as my career, because as coaches, we want to win,
Yeah.
and we do know that you in essence you got to win, even in public school ball. You got to put together, you got to be more successful than what people thought you was, and that's a lot of pressure. But you got to keep it on the process, and you can't never forget that. It took one of my former players to put me back on that. So, Michael, if you're ever going to listen to this podcast, man, hey, I thank you, brother. He was part of one of my first groups, and each of these boys hang on my wall each and every single place that I've been at, and all of them are doing really, really super good things, and I'm super proud of all of them.
Man, you gotta love it when a former player still remembers the message and remembers the motto, and not only that, applies it to their life, and then not only that, uses it on you as a way to get you back on track. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what it's
yeah.
all
He
about.
had to check me. That was
Yeah.
wild.
That's fun. That's funny. That's great. Coach, to wrap up, I give every guest what I call 60-second soapbox, a platform for you to get out a final message, a closing thought, just a final idea that you want to go ahead and leave the listeners with. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to you, and I'm just going to let you take it from here.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on. This was cool to talk about ball and to talk about life. I guess, you know, the one thing I guess on my soapbox that I would say as coaches is that, you know, each and every single one of us, it's our duty to grow these kids and to grow this game. I'm a basketball head. I believe it's the greatest game on earth, and I believe our job as coaches are some of the greatest honors that you can have. You know, you just keep learning from each other, keep staying in it, you know, doing the things that you know that you need to do. Take care of yourselves, take care of your body, spend time with your families, and love on your families. And you know, and remember that those relationships are important. We lose too many good coaches in this business because of coach burnout and being worried about the results. People who don't understand are going to fire us anyway. So just touch as many lives as you can and spend as much time with your family. If you're not bringing your family around your programs, your family needs to be around your programs. The kids need to know your significant other, wife. They need to know your kids, and you know, just make it something that's worthwhile. And then at the end of the day, when you look back on it, it won't feel like a grind. It'll feel like a beautiful journey. And good luck to everybody on finishing the rest of their season. I hope you guys finish healthy and strong. And if you want to reach out and conversate on Twitter, I'm a follow back kind of guy. I probably follow more people than people who follow me, but that's okay. I just love, and I'm such a fan of basketball, and I'm such a fan of other coaches and seeing what you guys do, and post as many plays and sets as you can, because I'm stealing them. But just good luck to everybody, and just stay in it, keep doing things, take care of your mental, and keep reaching as many kids as you can.
Coach Kincaid, thank you so much for joining us to talk about your team, your program, discipline on and off the court. So much good stuff that we could take, not just on the court, but transforming the players we work with into better people overall. So same to you. Best of luck with everything going forward. Hope everyone stays safe, finishes healthy, and good things keep on coming for you. Thank you, Coach.
All right. Thank you, Coach. I appreciate you.
And thank you all for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.